Hi there, welcome to episode 59 of Paranormal Blip. And I'm beset by technical problems today. You may hear that there is a helicopter circling the house, above the house, I should say. It's not inside the house. And very odd. I mean, I can't quite work out why. I'm not saying it's the men in black. Or the Women in Black, episode 13 or whatever that was. But the last couple of weeks, I don't know why, I live in a very quiet little town in the southwest of Britain. But if you are beset by helicopters flying overhead regularly, then you know how irritating it can be. I can't see any kind of reason for them to do that. Anyway, it's a bit of a strange episode this has turned into, isn't it? Me just complaining about a helicopter that actually has gone. Oh no, I can still hear it. Anyway, hello. Thank you for joining me. Now, we are updating you with, there's a bit of a split in opinion or a difference of opinion with whether disclosure is around the corner or not. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to talk about that. And we're going to look at some very interesting comments that Rubio made to News Nation a couple of days ago as well. So there you go. I've set out my stool. And now all I need to say is thank you for following me on Twitter, if you do, and for subscribing on... Can you hear it? It's really... You probably can't hear it, but anyway, it's quite off-putting. Anyway, and for following me on, subscribing on Spotify, subscribing on Apple, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, and doing the Instagram as well. And so, thank you. Essentially, what I'm saying is thank you. If you want more Paranormal Blip content, then please do subscribe to the subscriber episodes, and there are 8 up at the moment. And you can get them. There's a link in this episode. Okay, so thank you ever so much for everyone that's subscribing. It's only 99p a month, roughly €1.20, something like that. So not much money at all for that unlocks 8 episodes, and I'm regularly doing other episodes as well, like adding on to the 8, in the future. So we'll listen to the Blonks, and then we'll go straight into Rubio. So a couple of days ago, Marco Rubio did an interview for News Nation, and it was a really interesting interview. And essentially, he kind of talked about the folk that have been coming into the Congress and giving interviews with staff of the Congress people and the senators, and senators and Congress people themselves in some cases. And this has been going on for a couple of years. We kind of know about this, but it's interesting that Rubio said it, to us. And here's a little bit of what he said.
We'll say there are people that have come forward to share information with our committee over the last couple of years. I would imagine some of them are potentially some of the same people that perhaps he's referring to. I want to be very protective of these people. A lot of these people came to us even before these protections were in the law for whistleblowers to come forward.
Sorry, people who have had firsthand knowledge, who claim to have firsthand knowledge of seeing this type of thing?
Or have firsthand knowledge or firsthand claims of certain things. Some are public figures, and we've heard from them in the past. Others, have not shared publicly. And so we're trying to gather as much of that information as we can. And the reason why I'm being cautious, I'm not trying to be evasive, but I am trying to be protective of these people. Some of these people still work in the government. And frankly, a lot of them are very fearful of their jobs, fearful of their clearances, fearful of their career. And some, frankly, are fearful of harm coming to them.
So that category of people who have firsthand knowledge, who say they have actually seen these kinds of things, do you find many of them credible?
Well, I don't find them either not credible or credible because we have no basis. Understand some of these claims are things that are beyond sort of the realm of what any of us has ever dealt with. What I think we owe them is just a mature, understand, listening, and trying to put all these pieces together and just sort of intake the information without any prejudgment or jumping to any conclusions in one direction or another. I will say I find most of these people at some point, or maybe even currently, have held very high clearances and high positions within our government. So you do ask yourself, like, what incentive would so many people with that kind of qualification, these are serious people, have to come forward and make something up?
So that's a very interesting point he makes at the end. What's the incentive for these people to come forward if they're all making it up? I mean, it doesn't really make sense, does it? So that's interesting. So that came and went and caused a bit of a stir. And then the Daily Mail, Matthew Phelan, the senior science reporter for dailymail.com in the UK, they published something on the 30th of June, okay, which was 2 days ago oh no, sorry, it was just yesterday as I record. And this was really interesting. And I've got it linked. Here's the headline. UFO fever grips Washington. Republican congressman says UFOs may be ancient civilization, in quotation marks, as Senator Marco Rubio worries craft retrieval programs are being run by internal military complex that is accountable to no one. Quotes. And then it goes on now, like this is quite interesting because, first of all, they've got Mike Gallagher, who, as the uh, caption for one of the photos says, lets loose his own theories on the mystery this Tuesday, suggesting UFOs might be time-traveling craft or an ancient civilization that's just been hiding, which is, I mean, that's incredible that, a congressman is saying that on a podcast. Amazing. But then it talks about Rubio, and these were unaired sections of the News Nation interview. And this gets really interesting. And I think it was earlier today, they played News Nation, then kind of did another piece following on from the Daily Mail's piece, playing the new kind of section of their Rubio interview. So here is that.
It's very problematic if it's accurate, because if that is accurate, and again, I'm not in a position yet to make that judgment, but if that is accurate, what you're basically saying is that within the government of the United States, there's a group of people who believe that they possess something that they don't need to share with anybody, including elected officials who they view as temporary employees of the government, and in essence, some sort of an internal military complex that's their own government and is accountable to no one. So it would be a huge problem if it's even partially true.
So just to be really clear, Marco Rubio, the question that you don't hear is about Arrow, okay? And the guy, the interviewer for News Nation, says he also claims that Arrow is not being read in, that whatever this program is allegedly is keeping the people who are supposed to be dealing with it in the dark. It's not just about funding, it's about disclosure to Arrow as well. Do you think that's realistic, or how problematic is that if that's accurate? And then Rubio responds, as you've heard, it's very problematic if it's accurate, because if that is accurate, and again, I'm not in a position yet to make this judgment, but if that is accurate, what you're basically saying is that within the government of the United States, there's a group of people who believe that they possess something that they don't need to share with anybody, including elected officials who they view as temporary employees of the government. And, in essence, some sort of an internal military complex that's their own government and is accountable to no one. So it would be a huge problem if it's even partially true. I mean, that is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, of course, we understand this on one level, but when somebody like Marco Rubio says it, who's high up in his committee there, you're thinking, okay, then, what signals is he giving out there in terms of, the strength of the language and in terms of like the UAP language that has been written and kind of agreed upon, and, hopefully they're going to be putting it into the bill that will become an act if it's kind of voted through in a couple of months' time. And also, what's kind of, he's laying down a marker basically saying, after you say that, you can't do nothing. Do you know what I mean? So it's very, very interesting. And of course, it gets to the heart of, the idea of a democracy. Yeah. I mean, of course, we all understand that things are hidden from us, kind of state secrets, and people get away with things that you could, are unethical. I mean, we're not children. Do you know what I mean? We understand that states with massive powers do unethical and illegal things in our name as a way of, manipulating and controlling others, manipulating and controlling us to a certain extent. And yet at the same time, piece by piece by piece, or strike by strike by strike, to use Stephen Bassett's analogy, his analogy with a dam that's been hit for years and years and years by UFO researchers and, experiencers and others with a kind of stakeholderness. And now the dam is starting to, well, it, is leaking, and maybe the cracks are so big in that dam that it's going to start bursting. And when somebody like Marco Rubio says what he's just said, you do wonder, how long until disclosure happens, and is it starting with a series of hearings, public hearings, because the private hearings have already happened. And it's very interesting. I mean, a couple of people, I think Ross Coulthart has made this point in the last couple of days, and certainly a couple of other people as well, I think. When Matt Laszlo stops them in the corridors of their offices and asks about this, Matt Laszlo, this brilliant journalist based in Washington, D.C., who's kind of door stopping all of these guys and asking them about the UAP issue, then they're kind of like say, oh, I don't know much about it. And they've all been like briefed about it by the significant people, like Comer, for instance. He's been briefed about it. Do you know what I mean? He's about to kind of set up, do you know, he's about to set up hearings about it, and he may not be Tim Burchett, or he may not be Luna, the real people in the oversight committee that are really interested in this, and know the kind of the detail of the UAP issue. But they've, been briefed on, numerous interviews that their staff have done, even if they themselves haven't sat in on those interviews or kind of seen those interviews that, have happened over the last couple of years. Yeah. So there is a kind of show aspect to this. There's a performance aspect to this. And the reason why that's happening is what we're going to talk about now. So in the last couple of days, we've been lucky enough to be blessed with two remarkable interviews. The links are in the episode description, by the way. One of them is Richard Dolan talking to Stephen Bassett. Okay, and Richard's or Mr. Dolan, his write-up for the interview that I link says, for more than 20 years, no one in the UFO community has been more associated with the concept of UFO disclosure than Steve Bassett. Since the 1990s, he's worked tirelessly as a self-described UFO activist to achieve the goal of official recognition of the reality of the UFO/UAP reality by the United States government. Now, 3 weeks after the latest major revelation in the community from David Grusch, Richard Dolan interviews Steve on what's next. Are we truly close to some kind of genuine UFO disclosure? Steve believes the answer is yes and explains why. And then the other interview that we're going to be kind of like talking about is the interview just from today, actually, with Kurt Jamungal from Theories of Everything, TOE, talking to Ross Coulthart. And Ross Coulthart has a slightly different view of this. So, first of all, let's look at Stephen Bassett. This is a short clip that lays out what Stephen Bassett is thinking in regard to disclosure this summer.
The post-disclosure world is coming. It could arrive this summer. So I'm going to be focusing on that. I know you know what I'm talking about, Richard. And Grusch is simply one big blow to that dam.
And I hope I'm fairly representing Mr. Bassett in this summary. But as far as I can see, Stephen Bassett's position is that disclosure this summer is possible because, you know, the big boys in the Senate aren't going to let the Oversight Committee have all the fun with public disclosure or public hearings, I should say, of UAP witnesses and people that may even be working on the programs. And also, you know, there's many people that are sitting there like Tim Burchett, who, as far as I can tell, and I think Stephen does say this, they don't have the clearances to even listen to the information, like any kind of, you know, state secret information of that kind of high level. Okay, but the folks that can, so that is Comer's oversight committee, where James Comer is the kind of chair of that committee, and you've got Tim Burchett and someone else whose name is Luna, I believe, who are the kind of like the key UAP people there. As Stephen Bassett says that, you know, Burchett, in fact, just you know, Graham Randall and loads of other people. You know, Vinnie Adams and loads and loads of people are in Roswell at the moment, yeah, at this UAP convention. And Tim Burchett came in for a little kind of chinwag with them all yesterday. And apparently they're looking for the last week of July. Tim Burchett and the Oversight Committee are looking to do public hearings in the last week of July. So whether that happens or not, you know, we'll see. But Stephen Bassett says, you know, Marco Rubio and, you know, Senator Gillibrand and others will want to kind of have a piece of that action, essentially. And of course, it's those intelligence and, you know, national security committees that, you know, the members of those committees are the folk that do have the clearances where you'd be able to actually listen to the information. Do you know what I mean? So, so essentially, Stephen Bassett's argument is that the White House at some point are going to have to step in, okay? And he thinks the sooner the better. From the point of view of the 2024 race is just about to kick off. You know, this August is the first of the Republican televised, you know, the kind of head-to-heads on the stage, what they call that, the debates, yeah? And so he's thinking, you know, if it's just kind of left with a couple of public hearings and the White House doesn't take ownership of this and, you know, kind of basically say, yes, we've got NHI and probably, you know, not much more than that, but essentially that in a way is disclosure, the kind of US government very publicly saying we have contact with non-human intelligence. Yeah. And you're not going to get, like, you know, we've said this numerous times, you're not going to get the hangar doors and, you know, kind of live streams of, you know, Lockheed Martin or whoever else who have got the craft, you know. So there are things that obviously are still going to be secret. Yeah, for like, there's no reason why the U.S. government are ever going to let that become public. Okay. And he says that there's a kind of, appetite. Bassett says, and I hope I'm, kind of fairly characterizing what he says in this interview with Richard Dolan. He says that, the senators and the Congress people have got the bit between their teeth and they are running with this. And at some stage, the White House needs to step in and, if you like, kind of, to play their part in owning this. Yep. And the sooner, the better. So this is why he says it's possible that this will happen in the summer. And then Ross Coulthart, who gave this interview, absolutely extraordinary interview with Kurt, says, well, you could formulate a way whereby, certain people in the Senate, the Gang of Eight, for instance, get to know certain things, and it is tight and it is secret, but it doesn't become public. And any hearings essentially are just as kind of dull as like all the other hearings that we've had. And essentially, like, nothing of interest or nothing of value is, and I'm, using my own words here to again, hopefully fairly summarize Ross Coulthart's stance on this, as kind of illustrated in the TOE interview. Nothing of value, nothing of substance really is going to become public. And he has a fear that it could actually just kind of go behind the scenes again. Yep. That there's a risk that this will kind of dissipate. All of the excitement, all of the energy, and all of the anticipation of something big happening will dissipate. Okay. And of course, if you think about it, and he says, like, he was like a lawyer, and he says that if you've got an intellectual property lawyer on your side and you're part of, he says, let's say Lockheed Martin, so let's say Lockheed Martin, but whoever else, like, another big kind of, corporation that's interested in flying objects. You could drive a coach and horses through the bill. So, I mean, for instance, you could set up a front company, transfer everything to the front company, and just shrug your shoulders to the senators and say, sorry, Gov, but I don't know what you're talking about. What? Us? Crashed what? Crashed what? No, no, not us. And also, he says, well, what about, because the bill is to do with, or the proposed bill, I should say, like, the language that's been written is to do with things that have had some contact historically with the US government. Yeah. So the idea being that the US government had these craft, and then at one point, because people started to look too closely at it, they gave it to, kind of selected corporations, like, as an example, Lockheed Martin. Not saying Lockheed, if you're listening, Lockheed Martin, stop sending the bloody helicopters up above my head, please, for crying out loud. So, but, as an example, Lockheed Martin, and that happened like, in the 50s, or maybe it was the 70s, but, basically years and years ago. And Ross says, well, actually, like, I kind of, if they've put in the money for the last 50 years and tried to kind of reverse engineer this baby for the last 50 years, then who the hell are the Senate to turn up and say, come on, hand it over, because it's nothing new with them anymore, So it may be that the Gang of Eight or some other folk who are the kind of the like chiefs of the House and the Senate, in terms of intelligence, and leaders of the House and Senate as well. And so the kind of chiefs of the intelligence committees and the leaders of the House and the Senate, that's the Gang of Eight. It may be that they know, essentially they're kind of read in slightly to this, but it's basically continues as a kind of, locked door. Yeah. And from a public point of view, we don't get anything, we we get zilch, zilcho. So they're quite different, on the kind of spectrum of what might happen. They're certainly not the extremes of the spectrum, like the edges of the spectrum, but certainly there is a difference between how Stephen Bassett is saying this and how Ross Coulthart is saying this. I mean, to tell you the truth, thinking through it, I'm slightly more inclined to go with Ross's sense. I mean, I really can't see that in the next couple of months, Biden is going to say we have contact with a non-human intelligence, and yet, of course, at the same time, saying that like there is a there, and it does need to be explained. And so I can't imagine it dissipating into nothing, because there are too many, they have to justify their language. I mean, Rubio has to justify what he's saying now. You can't say that and then not act. Yeah. The language that is being proposed talks about, non-earth craft, like craft not of this earth. Yeah. So they have to justify this, They're writing that language because they know, because they've been talking to the people for the last couple of years, Grush's allegations need to be investigated. So whether we find out or not, there is going to be a growing community of people all around the world who have a need to know, not to plug. Not to plug. It's a very good name for a podcast, isn't it? Yeah, social distancer. But not to plug Ross Coulthart's podcast, but there will be that sense there, and it doesn't make sense that what's his name? Oh, Kirkpatrick says, "Oh yeah, we see these metallic orbs flying around all over the world." Just dropping that in at the old NASA briefing the other week, and not not following up on that. It doesn't make sense that the guy from Canada is writing a letter a couple of months ago that was, leaked by what's his name? I mean, apparently it was leaked beforehand. Nobody took notice, but leaked by Corbell and Knapp, and there are a number of things that need to be followed up. And the problem here really is that, Arrow are, they are not investigating, okay? And the senators need to investigate. Like somebody needs to investigate. Somebody needs to get their sleeves rolled up and investigate. It's not good enough just to write whistleblower language, expecting the whistleblowers with all of the pressures and difficulties on their shoulders to come to you. You need to get out and get going on this. You know what I mean? You know where to look. You've been told where this stuff is. You need to have an active, dynamic investigation where you actually get out and, look for this stuff. It's not good enough to just put the Batman signal out and wait for Batman to come to you. You gotta be Batman, okay? You're Batman. I was telling my subscribers that they were gods the other day. Now I'm saying that you are Batman. See, this is the difference. If you subscribe, you go up to a higher level. Oh yeah. Anyway, right, now what I'm going to leave you with though is this really interesting thing from Ross's interview with Kurt, where he talks about the UK. This is tasty.
Let's deal with the UK. I think the UK knows a lot more than Canada or Australia. It's been a very active member of the Five Eyes through the Foreign Material Program, because there have been retrievals in the United Kingdom and in Europe, I am told. It is alleged to me. I don't know that for sure, but the allegation that has been put to me, and that includes British Special Forces personnel, is that there have been active operations, crash retrievals, even within the last few years. This has been an ongoing issue.
So isn't that interesting? And this is an open goal for journalists in the UK to, let's get cracking on this. How come Ross knows this, but Andrew Marr, as an example, doesn't. Yeah. So, I know that UK media, in some regards, like the Mail and various other outlets, are doing good work in this space. And obviously, Christopher Sharp is the kind of exemplar of that in the UK. But I want to know more. There's so little comes out about the UK. Most of it comes out because of Ross. So, I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary. And I don't really think it's anything more than, stigma. But the stigma is real, and it's stopping people chasing a fascinating story. And there really is a lot of meat on the bone now. Just look at the facts of the language, of the things that people are saying, of just the idea that Kirkpatrick said a couple of weeks ago. Oh yeah, we see lots of these like metallic spheres all around the world, and we don't know what they are. I mean, that is extraordinary. Just that on its own, needs to be chased down. And there's so many aspects of this story, including what Ross just said there about the UK, that need to be chased down. Now, here's something else that Ross says to Kurt, and it's a real interesting one. And when I was reading the kind of proposed legislation and the language that's used, I was thinking about this. What if, as an example, Lockheed Martin catches their own, or let's say retrieves their own UAP? I mean, what if they've got the technology to entice, to bait, and then to catch a UAP, which has got nothing to do with the US government? It's their own technology that they have, kind of created, and then they've got a UAP. What if all of this happens outside of the US, and the UAP, and nothing to do with the UAP, ever goes into US territory? Yep. That is one example that Ross talks about of being a grey area legally. Yep. So it wouldn't be that difficult to elude if you were interested in, and of course they are, interested in eluding capture, as it were, by Congress, that it wouldn't be that difficult. And apparently, he's saying that he's heard of one, or maybe Lockheed, let's just say for, because I keep saying it, for argument's sake, Lockheed Martin are trying to get rid of a craft that they already have, because they're realizing, this is looking pretty hot now. So they're doing a deal with another corporation, to kind of get rid of their one of their UAPs, or maybe their only UAP. So it's all very kind of odd, very odd conversations to have. But at the end of the day, unless you've got a real like fire in your belly bunch of interrogators that are going after this stuff and like know where to look and find out where to look and look, like instant kind of surprise inspections with the kind of full weight of the US government behind you, then it's going to be quite well, not easy, but certainly possible to keep it secret. And there's enough people, in this, we hear about this war in the Department of Defense or between the different factions, and there's enough people that are interested in keeping this secret as well. Now, of course, the other side of this is, how much from a money point of view, because of course it's really good to follow the money, how much of this, what is the balance between like, spinning this out financially, spinning out some kind of product to the marketplace, so you're really making the big bucks, but at the same time realizing that you can't be totally truthful about the origins of that thing that you spin out. Yeah. Like, what is the line there? What is the line that you are kind of, that tightrope that you're walking, whereby, you probably could, if this was all public, you probably could make an awful lot of money. Yep. And you probably could, be exposing the world to a technology that would be incredibly useful, probably, game changing. I mean, I don't know what we're talking about here, but obviously, um, the craft can do extraordinary things. Yep. And like Gary Nolan says, one little bit of silicon changed the world, like changed everything, So you can imagine the kind of financial benefit of, maybe there's a clever way of using the whistleblower language and law to come forward and make billions, maybe. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with my final thoughts on Avi Loeb's brilliant project for that meteorite that he's been looking for. But before that, we're going to listen to the blimp. Okay, so here's Avi Loeb on the way back from IM1 site. This was put up a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. Diary of an Interstellar Voyage, Report 34. So I'm going to read you the first bit and the last bit. Yeah, this is from one of the, paragraph 5, I think. Amazingly, we recovered 50 Sifruls along IM1's path, but not in control regions far from it, confirming the association of the Sifruls with IM1 and not with background events from the past, as they would be uncorrelated with the specific length and direction of IM1's path. During the fight, I sat across the aisle from Art Wright, who drank whiskey with a silver ball cooler in his glass. With the expedition in my mind, the silver ball appeared like a giant cephalil. It celebrated the success of our scientific mission as Art skillfully navigated Silver Star through IM1's path. And then you have a photograph of an old man. It's certainly in his 70s. I would say that he's about 74. I'm quite good at this. So probably 74. And I'd say his birthday's in March. So yeah, just turned 74 a couple of months ago. That's my guess. And this guy, his name is Art Wright. And it's a photo of him sitting on a plane. And in front of him, there's a napkin. And on the napkin, there's a tumbler, a very nice looking tumbler, with some whiskey in it. And also, there's this massive silver ball in it. I didn't know this was a thing. I mean, I don't live in the world of putting balls in my drinks. But, so this is a giant silver ball that clearly is in there to cool the whiskey, which is quite an extraordinary image. Anyway, that's quite interesting. And then at the end, he says, this is Avi says, in the coming weeks, we will analyze the cephals we collected and report the results in a paper submitted to a peer-reviewed journal. Given that IM1 was moving faster than 90% of the stars in the vicinity of the sun and that it had an anomalous material strength, its source may have been a natural environment different from the solar system or an extraterrestrial technological civilization. Yes, science can be exciting if we could only allow ourselves to learn something new. So congratulations, Dr. Loeb, or Professor Loeb, I should say. Sorry, Loeb. I don't know why I'm saying Loeb all of a sudden. Congratulations, Professor Loeb. And I look forward to, further analysis. And continuing, a little pause as a kind of brief respite. So listen, thanks so much for listening to me. And we'll be back in a couple of probably not next weekend. But we've got quite a number of guests lined up, which I know you're going to be really interested in. So I'm not, releasing the names right now, but we've got some tasty guests lined up in the next couple of weeks. So it's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to speaking to these people. So, yeah, listen, you take care and see you later.